Alright. We're live. Hi, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, for those of you guys just tuning in, my name is Christel Crawford, and this is my amazing partner, Andres Cardenas. And we wanted to create this conversation for you guys. And we titled it, Can You Change Your Stars? You have just started a new business called Healing Credit Easy. And so I'm going to come on to your platform and really contribute the access consciousness tools. But this conversation and the title for this conversation came out of a video that you were watching the other day. Yesterday, was it? And we started just sort of chatting back and forth about the difference that the access consciousness tools are, but also the similarities. And so do you want to start with talking a little bit about, what you're all about, and also what you watched and where this conversation came from?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for having this moment and this space. I hope everyone gets a contribution from this. So one of the reasons why I like to start looking everywhere and poking every single space is I'm new to the world to access consciousness, and I get to see you every day, and I get to kind of witness what you do with your life and what you bring to our home. And then it's funny that sometimes you can understand certain concepts, and sometimes you just have to outsource them. So I start looking at what is with the repetition of the words and just saying sentences every day. Why the word consciousness? And I look at this documentary where there's a Dr. Lipton saying that the first 7 years of your life, you are a programming machine. You're like a Matrix movie where everything gets programmed in your brain. And then when the year 7 ends, then you're living your life, you're navigating, cruising it. And then that's one of the reasons why people that was on the poor reality, the first 7 years of their life, they remain poor the rest of their life, and opposite with the rich people. And then that kind of caused a controversy, because I understand that wasn't exactly your case. I was wondering if you want to just clarify a little bit. Did that always happen for you? Was your first 7 years of your life abundance?
No, actually, quite the opposite. My mom had me when she was really young. She was 21. And which, whatever, there's lots of young mothers, I suppose. But her and my dad were really, really broke. In fact, they lived in a trailer park in the United States, which is very low cost. And that's where I grew up until I was about 8. So we had a very small home, and then she kept having babies. So it was very crowded after a while. And then we moved into the suburbs, into another state where my dad got a better job, and we had a bigger house and everything. But the financial reality with me growing up was definitely the first 7 years of my life. All the arguments that my parents had were about money and not being enough money, and we were poor. So I learned so many different things about money that just sort of became intrinsic to the way that I functioned. Primarily that there's never enough, and it's hard to get, and there's always a ceiling, and it's low. So that's what I grew up with, and actually kind of kept maintaining that almost until I was 40, because I found access consciousness when I was 38, and I'd come through 2 marriages and, a number of careers and owning a business that went out of business. So I was trying to change my stars. I wanted different, and I didn't know how to do it in I had never gone the typical route in my life. So I didn't have a degree. I was very smart, but I didn't have a degree, and I'd gone to a little small Bible school. So I'd had a tiny degree that I could do nothing with. So everything about me was different. And I was trying to get my life to work and couldn't seem to do it until I found the access consciousness tools.
Oh, amazing. And I think I have a better sense of what the word really means. But let me ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to read a few sentences, and you tell me if this sounds familiar to your childhood. Or you can't make it, or life is a struggle, or things are hard, or who do you think you are?
Yeah, it was more like life is just struggle. Like that was just understood that life was going to be, that life is hard. Life is hard, period. Not really who do you think you are. It was interesting because I think my mom at the time also really wanted to change her stars. We got ourselves into Amway, which was this multi-level. When I was 18, I found it and I got her inspired. And so we were really like dream building and driving around looking at big houses and, you know, which is what they tell you to do. It's like they're like, fill your well with the image and the vision of money, which, you know, and I was so pumped. Like, I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And I would get dressed up in my business suits and we'd go to these big seminars, her and I together at the time. And I was ready. And so that was probably the first opening that I had into a different possibility. Like, and the premise there was like, if you study enough and you read enough books and you surround yourself with enough people that are, you know, having wealth and building wealth, that you'll make it. Like that'll rub off, you know? And so I was reading all the time. And so it was beginning. And then I'm not sure what happened. I was young. And so I was also trying to separate and like go live my life. And so then she and I split and then I went to jail. There was a lot of stuff happened. But I say all that to say that, you know, there's good-hearted people in the world that are like, yeah, if you just do this kind of stuff, you know, it'll work. And it was good. And I got a lot of really good information, but it didn't change the way I fundamentally functioned, which I found out later was the thing that kept the recurring poverty level in place, right? I hadn't changed anything about how I fundamentally was with money.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Those are,
by the way, you guys, we have not pre-scripted this conversation. I intentionally didn't have it with him. And I'm like, let's just wing it. So we're winging it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at this interesting fact that it says that when we live, 95% of what we live every day, it comes from programming. It comes from the subconscious that was imprinted on us for the first 7 years of our life. And then the remaining 5% is what we learn while we're alive after 7 years old. And then in order for us to learn in that stage of life and change our programming, we have to become conscious. I would like if you could enhance that word, the word conscious or consciousness. Yeah. What do you say about that?
Well, I guess one of the first things I want to say is that the word's used in a lot of different contexts right now. Like it's thrown around a lot, and some of it rings true for me and some of it doesn't. And I guess what I would say to any of you guys watching is always listen to things with the piece of information that what's light for you is true for you and what's heavy has a lie in it somewhere. But for me, what consciousness is it includes everything and judges nothing. And what I got from access consciousness was access to the consciousness I am that then empowered me to change my stars. And so that's what I like when I hear consciousness. I think a lot of times with that word and with the concept of consciousness, it seems like there's like something outside of you sometimes, you know, that if you can just access this mystical thing, then you'll be able to create something different. But what I discovered was really different, which is that, you know, the more I use the clearing statements and the loops, which you were sort of referring to in the very beginning as something you can repeat over and over, the more I kind of shaved off the unconsciousness that had covered up the consciousness I am, which is actually all powerful and all choosing and all, you know, I know things and I can lead myself places when I'm not busy doing, I have a problem and I'm doubting myself and I'm afraid and all that other stuff that I was so distracted with all of the rest of my life. You know, when I'm able to access the consciousness I am, then I can actually create anything I want. And it turns out I did want a bigger life and I could choose it after I got access to that power that I am through using the tools.
Awesome. You know what? You just mentioned something very important, and it's part of the documentary I was watching, and it's the repetition. So, and that turns out that you could be aware, you could be a creative person, and you want to learn certain things. So like perspective, you didn't have a wealthy, it was more like a struggling childhood, the first
Yeah.
7 years of your life.
Yeah.
So that will have determined the rest of your life to being a poor person.
According
So
to this world, yeah, that's I'm fated.
according that's pretty much how the human brain works.
Yeah.
But what it seems to have happened is that you had that will in you that you are so creative, and that's the first part of being conscious. Like when you are conscious, when you're creative, but it doesn't stop that. You just want to learn something new, because I see you reading a lot of books and a lot of material, but I also see you repeating after you. And I've seen you, I know there are some loops that they have to be read for 90 days and 30 times 90 days. Let me tell you a little bit about that. Maybe you can enhance that. So it says that the only way to reprogram your brain, because you're already 7 years older and there's really no physical way to do it, is to learn something and to repeat it at least 90 times. And how do you feel about that? Can you really think that you can program your brain to be something different of what your childhood or what your beginning of the life was?
I not only think you can, I've done it, but I think I would adjust with that. I would say something different, which is that I find for me, my mind is the limitation of what I can actually choose. Where when I have access to my being, which really you don't see a lot of videos on that outside of access consciousness. You don't see a lot of videos that talk about getting access to what you are. Maybe sometimes, but so when you get access to what you are, it goes beyond your brain, because you're empowered to choose. And it's actually, so there, I'll talk about the repetition after this, but it is actually your ability to choose that bypasses programming. If you have to undo all your programming before you choose, then it's very time consuming. But if you can choose and bypass what you've been programmed, then it's very fast. And that was what I discovered with Access that I didn't know I could do, which is that I don't actually have to, I do things to undo programming, and it does contribute on the side. But the primary tool that I started to use was like, what choices do I have that I haven't considered, and beginning to choose in directions that for some reason before that time I had thought was unavailable to me. So I would say choice bypasses programming. And when you choose something different, everything in the universe, including in your physiology, reorganizes to support your choice. And it's just that most of us walk through the world thinking we have no choice. And for all kinds of reasons, so then there's the repetition part of it, which is, in Access Consciousness, we do a number of different things to unravel unconsciousness. Because the only time you can have a problem, the only time you can't change your stars is when you are not being something, you don't know something, you're not willing to perceive something, and you're not receiving, which who talks about receiving? What the fuck is that? Right? But I didn't know that. So what we do with the clearing statements and some of these 30 times 30 challenges that we then kind of repeat for multiple more days is we shave off the unconsciousness, keeping us from accessing the consciousness we are, that once you access gives you all the choice in the world. And so I would say it's a couple of facets on the repeating thing of like, the thing that I had to really repeat and practice, and Gary Douglas talks about this all the time, was choice. Like I actually had to practice choice because I was so used to not having choice. I was like used to being at the effect of, the stress I thought that was inevitable, or the hardship that I was told life was. And so I had to practice and repeat, like getting that everything's just an interesting point of view. For example, I had to practice that daily because I'm like, and I had to practice like getting that I'm aware. Oh, right. I'm aware. I'm not fucked up. Wait a minute. Now, how many times a day do I have to remind myself of that to get it? It's like, I am aware. So I guess with some of that stuff, like, yeah, absolutely. That's the practice for sure. And in the practice of it, you start to get it. But what I think hasn't been mentioned is that in the practice of it, it isn't the doing of the practice that reprograms, it's that it gives you more access to being. And once you're being something, you no longer need to do it anymore. You're being it. And that's where all the power is.
I agree with that. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. If I were to ask you that you could give everyone a piece of advice, and this comes from a perspective of my business. So when I'm looking at my business, what I see is I have to deal with something that is very natural, and it's dealing with your credit is not easy. It's a heavy topic, and we tend to avoid it. And I did avoid it myself for a certain time until I decided to do it. And then many people, you've gone through that as well. But if you were to give people advice into how you could change your stars about your reality, and then you have to face credit, what would you say that they can choose, or how can they proceed to that?
Yeah. I think for me, I had to really just get honest with myself and go, is what I'm choosing now with this to avoid it or not deal with it or not handle it, is that working? I think honesty with self is probably the thing I would say is going to be your most valuable asset, and go, is it working to avoid this? And really just get present with that. If it's not working, then when else can I choose so that my life works better? I didn't really get that I was the source of what showed up in my life. I don't know who I thought was in charge, but it didn't really, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I didn't do it, but when I started to get that I was the source, and that up to that moment, I'd been the source of a lot of mess and a lot of havoc and a lot of, disarray in my finances. That was when I really got to look at, okay, do I want to be the source of something else? And then I guess the only other thing I would add to that is that you also then want to add to your life resources and tools that support a change fundamentally in the way you're functioning, so that choice is easier, right? Because I came from sort of like this big, deep black hole of like, I had to come all the way up to like normal, whatever normal is, and then kind of, excel. And so we're all starting where we're starting. But I know for a lot of people, especially when they've let their finances get into some sort of messy place, that maybe that's true for you too. And so I would support yourself on several different levels. I would add a you to my life. I did. I'm lucky. I live with you. I would add two books from Access Consciousness and study them like Bibles. Money is not the problem, you are, and Right Riches for You, and really like live and breathe and use those tools. And then I would just sit down with yourself and really look at things and go, okay, is what I'm choosing really working? And I know the fourth thing that we're doing, and this is the gift of Access Consciousness, is that you can add like clearing calls to your life. One of the things about Access tools and classes is that when you go to one, you leave and you're different, right? Like you leave and then all this stuff's been cleared out and you just walk away and you just function different. Like you're not even sure what happened. You didn't even open your mouth, but you walk out of the room and you're like, well, I used to have a problem. Now I guess this is just easy. And so I suggested for you that we, for your people, that I could be a guest and actually invite everybody to a clearing call around the issues of money, because your point of view creates your reality. So if you can change your point of view, if you can get access to a space where you can choose a different point of view, then all of this is a lot easier. So I would probably 4 things instead of 1. But yeah, that combination is it makes you unstoppable.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It's important to kind of understand and hear how you face things. And I know you told me you were avoiding that, and
I was a master avoider.
But then somehow I don't know who came out of the bedroom and or came out of the office and say, okay, I'm doing this. It's happening. And it's happening. It's got that look on it that it is going to happen, and this is changing. And
yeah. But one of the things you added to my life that was such a gift to me, even after, I've been playing with Access Consciousness tools and really changing my stars for like 8 years now. But when you came into my life, the energy that you added that was such a contribution to me was that energy of just step by step. It's okay, one step at a time. We're in this for the marathon, and both together as a relationship, but also, as contributing to each other with different things. And, I have always been so extreme and so black and white, and, wanted everything done yesterday. And if it couldn't be done yesterday, then I was a failure and I would do nothing, so I was like everything or nothing. And you've shown me in so many different ways that gentleness of just, it's the daily, showing up daily and moving it forward one step at a time, and some days you can take 5 steps and whatever, but that has contributed a lot to me. And so maybe that's the thing number 5 that I would say to anybody watching is like, maybe that was thing number 1. I've lost track. But like, who can you add to your life that would contribute support and energies that maybe you have never even had before? You brought to my life a level of support that I didn't even know was available to ask for. And that, I think, is the gift of asking the universe, hey, what else is possible here that I haven't considered? You were part of what I hadn't considered. And so that's another gift of the tools, is like being empowered to ask questions that give you access to the gifts of the universe that are just waiting to be yours if you'll ask. So yeah, I just wanted to say that as well. Like, that was a huge piece of what's made this possible, is that steadiness that you provide, that I just started to get. It's like, if I just keep taking 2 more steps and I just keep like walking out of the office today and like, okay, today we're going to do this. And, then we'll look at the rest. And slowly things are getting cared for in a way that they hadn't been before. So yeah, anyway.
Thank you for sharing all that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you, would you be able to briefly guide us through the clearing call, sort of like someone that hasn't ever been there, like what will that person kind of look?
Yeah. Well, a clearing call with Access Consciousness is where you show up. That's the first step. Just get there. And hopefully the facilitator will ask some sort of question and we'll start somewhere. And what I like to do in clearing calls is make it really interactive. Like, what I'm looking at with a clearing call is, what can we clear out? What points of view can we clear out that make choosing something different and creating and changing your stars easier for you? So it's an hour of bringing stuff up, you participating, and then us clearing out with the clearing statement, which is really super weird and effective, for an hour. And so I kind of have a sense of where I'll start. But the coolest thing about it is that it's interactive and it meets you right where you are. And you get to change where you're functioning from in the moment with a facilitator who's looking at the energy with you and clearing it and participating in that change with you. So it's super weird, but it works. The tools of Access Consciousness are weird and they work. So that's what I want to invite your people to, and the rest of you watching this, you're invited as well. It's $50. I'll make sure that you get the link, and it's called, Is There a Point of View Keeping You from Having Money? 1 hour changing things with the Access Consciousness tools.
Well, I see you constantly, and every day and several times a day doing it, the exercises. And I see sometimes you pull up a document and follow it, or you use your Kindle, and it's all getting the tools available, so then you can do it, and you can do it faster, and then you can keep moving on your day.
Yeah, I'm extreme and I want more all the time. So you guys watching may or may not be like me. But the thing I want to tell you, all of you, is that you always know what's next for you. You always know. You're drawn to it inextricably. You get pulled, to something. And Monica's interested in the clearing. Will you share the link? We absolutely will. Yeah, this call. And if you're on my email list, you'll be invited as well. So watch for that. And we'll share it on social media. It's going to happen on Monday. But yeah, you always know. And so trust yourself. Trust what pulls you. Trust the direction that you want to go in, even if it makes no sense. And trust the people you're attracted to, and find out what it would take to work with those people or get into their classes or whatever it is, because you can trust you. So, yeah.
That's great. And one final thing I wanted to ask you, from your awareness, from what you sense, is this a good time in life to look at your finances or to
Oh,
look at
yeah.
changing your stars in terms of
Yeah.
financing and economies evolving?
I think we're just at a really unique, at the time of recording this, it's sort of a year into the pandemic. We're in a unique time in history where everything's changing, more dynamically than ever before. And, if not now, when? And if not you, who? And what would it take to be the person who did instead of the person who didn't?
I like that last question. I always supported that. Like, I would rather to ask myself, what could have I done different than what if I have done it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the choice,
Yeah.
the moment.
So thank you for you. And
No, thank you for you.
and you guys watching, you're so warmly invited to have more of you. And we would like to invite you to this call. And we'll just make sure you get the link so that you can have it. If you are watching and you want the link, just comment link. I'll make sure you get it directly. And for the rest of you, just watch your emails and watch social. And hopefully we'll get to see you on Monday. And Mr. Andres, I'll see you
Thank
downstairs.
you. All right. Thank you so much for your
Okay.
beautiful brain.
And bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.